times. You can never be too prepared. Mentally, physically, financially, agriculturally. Real people, real problems, real activism. Welcome to the Bob Tuskin Radio Show with your host, Bob Tuskin.
Okay, let me sum up today's lamestream media stories in less than a minute. Drone strikes exist. We killed only about 4 people. Eric Holder. Official dead Boston bombing suspect shot dead by the FBI after he was supposedly being held captive and interrogated. I plead the fifth, IRS, trickery, and more of that. Let's see here. More trauma from the Oklahoma tornadoes. And Ben Bernanke says premature Fed tightening would endanger recovery. Gun rights advocates sue over state law in Hartford, Connecticut. And, well, I'm sure there's a lot more, but there's the majority of the lamestream media's stories. Now that we've gone over all of that, and I'm sure I could go into great length into any one of those topics. Not that I want to, but I could. Tonight's guest, Mark Passio. Mark is the webmaster at What on Earth is Happening. He is a researcher and a organizer and an activist. Of course, he organized the Free Your Mind Conference number 2, which was in Philadelphia this past April. And boy, was it quite a conference. I was honored to be there amongst so many great people. I want to thank Mark very much for that event and the first one as well, which I was also lucky to be a part of. He is in the city of Philadelphia, as I just mentioned, and there's a lot going on there. Most notably, you've heard about N.A. Poe and Adam Kokesh being arrested at a pro-cannabis rally. And regardless of your take on cannabis, it seems that these two are political prisoners that were targeted for, well, no apparent reason. Well, there is an apparent reason, but, the feds won't tell us about it. They've been charged with assault on an officer, a federal officer, and all sorts of other badness that is clearly not what took place. And while this was all going on, or right before it was all going on, Mark Passio, our dear friend and colleague and frequent contributor to the show, Mark and I go way back, having started his podcast with one of my networks and so on and so forth. Mark Passio was being harassed for, no, not for smoking cannabis. No, not for streaking. I know Mark likes to streak occasionally. No, I'm joking, Mark. Don't get mad at me here, buddy. But no, you were basically using your First Amendment right. Bottom line. Mark, thanks for coming on.
Bob, it's always a pleasure to be on your show. Thank you so much for inviting me back.
So, that's the bottom line. You were passing out flyers, using your First Amendment right, and some guys in a costume decided that it was time to harass you because you dare put them in their place. Tell me more.
This is where we're at, ladies and gentlemen. Free speech is being shut down in America as we speak. This is what's going on. In the cradle of freedom, where this country was founded, in front of the building where the founders walked and wrote the Declaration of Independence and signed it. The nerve of what this federal government is doing. And people are sitting and taking it. Barb and I, my wife, we were walking on May 18th at about 3 o'clock p.m. I guess we could pick it up on the other side of the break.
We'll start right there, May 18th, right. 3:30 p.m. And we'll continue our talk with Mark Passio. This is startling stuff, folks. Stand by.
The Bob Tuskin Show.
Golden Stag Safari. Through their ministries of propaganda, each took complete control of the theater, the movies, the radio, every cultural activity and every channel of information.
Well, times is tough, all right. Yeah, I'll say.
It's the future.
Saturday, May 18th. Mark Passio, our guest tonight, was with his wife at 3:30 in the afternoon, passing flyers for, what were the flyers for, Mark?
We had some information about the immoral activities of the Federal Reserve Bank. I could actually read you what the flyer said if you're interested. It was actually at 3 o'clock p.m. in the afternoon on Saturday, May 18th. We had flyers alerting the public about the immoral activities of the Federal Reserve System and how it devalues the purchasing power of their dollar so that they need more of that unit of currency in order to purchase the same amounts of goods and services year over year. And therefore, that's what inflation is. It is not how prices are actually going up. It's about how the purchasing power of the dollar is going down. The value of the goods per se is not actually changing. The value of the monetary unit that's being used to exchange for the goods is what's changing. It is being deliberately devalued to keep people poor and destitute and have to make them work harder to pay for the same amounts of goods and services year over year. This is why people, basically can't even keep the same quality of life that they have been living in the past, because they actually need more money to purchase the same amount of goods and services as time goes on. So that's essentially what the flyer said. It was entitled "End the Fed," the Federal Reserve Bank keeping the poor poor since 1913. Then it had some quick facts about the Fed and how its monetary policy is responsible for this hidden tax known as inflation, which devalues the nation's money supply and basically is a form of hidden theft of people's savings and earnings. And that's all it was. It's true information that anybody can go and research about how the Fed's monetary policy actually works. And we have a right to engage people in speech and printed material. That is not a constitutional right, quote unquote. It's a constitutionally guaranteed and protected right, but it is a natural human right. No being on the surface of the earth has the right to tell any other being that they may not speak and hand information to someone who wishes to take it from their hand. No one can make a law stating that that is possible to do.
Well, Mark, according to the city code, that's not acceptable, though.
Oh, this isn't city code. This is federal.
According to the federal code, Mark, that's not allowed.
So they were trying to quote some obscure federal regulation to us, and I said, basically, I calmly told them that I'm peacefully exercising rights of free speech and press as I am walking through the area. And secondly, I had already finished handing the flyers out. I was done. They caught me at the very tail end of what I was doing, and I had already finished and was leaving the area. I was not even continuing to hand out flyers. We were finished, and we were walking away. They didn't like the fact that I guess they got there late and other people already got the info. And upon walking away, they started harassing us and telling us, you need a permit to do that. You have to pay for a permit to walk through this area and hand flyers to people. And I said, you can't be serious, can you? I said, I've done this 50 times. With this particular information, probably at least 20 times. With this particular type of information about the Federal Reserve. At least 20 times, maybe more. And no one ever said a word to me. And now all of a sudden you're telling me I need to pay the government permission to speak. Are you hearing this, ladies and gentlemen? Federal police are telling citizens of America, You need to pay the federal government permission to speak. I really hope you understand what time it is. I really hope people understand where we're at. Where we've let it get to because we are an immoral people. How does an adult even think this could possibly be okay? To go into a position and say, yes, I'll take money for a paycheck to do something like that. Their parents can't be moral people because they taught their children nothing about right from wrong. Nothing. So what? Yes, I'm enraged over this. Enraged.
As you should.
And everyone listening should be enraged as well.
Yeah, I mean,
that is a proper emotional response.
Yeah, well, we've been taught to bottle that up, Mark, and not get upset and just take it.
Yeah, now we're at the point where they're telling you, ladies and gentlemen, that you can no longer speak.
So when the goons, Mark, in the costume told you and your wife that you needed a permit, what happened from there?
I informed them very calmly at first, okay, until they, well, I'll tell you what happened afterward, but very calmly I informed them the rights to free speech and free press are unalienable. They are not granted by man, and they cannot be taken or even abridged by man. You cannot abridge these rights. You cannot say, well, you can't do this here, or you don't have a right to do this unless you ask permission and pay someone. No, incorrect. You are incorrect. I kept saying, sir, I understand you think this, but you are incorrect. And they didn't like that. They don't like anybody challenging them on a moral issue. I said, this has nothing to do with any federal regulations or laws, sir. I said, this has to do with morality and rights, and even higher than that, this has to do with a duty to truth, because if I know someone is being defrauded and stolen from in a way that they cannot even really see because it is an insidious form of theft, I have an obligation and a duty to inform people about that wrongdoing that is being done to them by someone else who is defrauding them. It goes beyond a human right. It is a human duty to the truth. And no one can tell anybody else that they may not exercise their conscience in that regard to warn other individuals about a wrongdoing that is being done unto them. No one will tell me that I do not have that right and cannot exercise that right and duty. So I very calmly said to them, this is a moral right that is not granted by man and cannot be taken away or abridged by man, and it is something that is guaranteed to the citizenry of this country in the Bill of Rights, in the First Amendment of the Bill of Rights to the Constitution of America. And I said, regardless of what regulation you're even quoting me, which I've never heard of anything about ever, certainly the United States Constitution trumps that little piece of regulatory legislation because it states Congress shall make no law abridging the freedom of speech or of the press. I mean, what part of that don't people grasp? What part of language do not people grasp? Shall make no law abridging the freedom of speech or of the press. Even in your own system of law, which you say you swear an oath to defend and protect, you're breaking that oath by even attempting to usurp that natural right and tell me I may not exercise it unless I pay someone first. Ladies and gentlemen, I'm telling you, you better wake up and realize where we are. This is the beginning of a total crackdown a la National Socialism or Soviet-style communism a la Stalin's Russia. And gulags are going to be next for anyone who puts forward any kind of oppositional political speech.
FEMA camps?
Exactly.
Yeah.
That's what's coming if the American public doesn't wake up and grow some morality amongst courage as well to stand up to this bully called the federal government that wants to now tell you that your free speech rights are shut down unless you pay their mafia criminal syndicate, their criminal banker syndicate that is ultimately led and run by dark occultists, no less. And you're telling people now they need to pay to speak. Well, not in this country. That's not going to be allowed to stand. You might get that done in other places, but not here. You're not going to get it done without consequence. Let's put it that way. Not without consequence.
Yeah. And the people in the costume with the shiny badge telling you this, the powers that shouldn't be, they're occult masters. They mock them. They look down upon them. They see these individuals as just simply pawns. And
in my background, they only ever called them two names. When I was interacting in those circles, in dark occult circles, I only ever heard two names referred to the police or the military. They never called them by any other institutional name. They never called them the police. They never called them law enforcement officers. Never.
When we come back, Mark, I want to hear what those two names are.
Sure.
And I also want to hear what happened from the point on in which you confronted them, telling them what they ought to know. Folks, Mark Passio, our guest tonight here on The Bob Tuskin Show.
The Bob Tuskin Show.
For many years, coffee...
What do the powers that shouldn't be think of the police? What do they call them? What were the two names that you heard firsthand being used to refer to the police?
The only names that these psychopathic dark occultists ever called the police and military, who they control ultimately on up the line of the hierarchy. They're totally in control of their actions and set their agendas. They call them our dogs or our pets. That's it. The only two names I ever heard them referred to by Satanists.
After all, the military does wear a dog.
And I don't mean as, yo, our dogs. Right. I mean our pets. Mm-hmm. The trained animals that cannot think any other thought than what we've programmed into their head, and they obey on command like the good little lap dog slaves that they are. Yep.
Stay, fetch, sit,
attack. Yeah,
attack. Yeah,
yep.
That's the main one. So, Mark,
there is a name though that higher level occultists that I was not involved with or really privy to, but I have since really learned their take or their name that they call this type of a mental state that they have police trained into, this secondarily sociopathic mind state. They call this the new man. The new man. A man that is completely broken down, the original personality or essence of the soul is completely devastated and destroyed. And they are remade into the image like a golem. A golem is fashioned from clay and animated by its master. Okay? They are made in a lesser image of the force that holds the minds of the dark occultists. This puppet force. They're animated like a puppet so that they dance when their strings are pulled, and, they completely have absolutely no free will of their own, not even to think about anything that involves anything involving common sense or conscience. They just have a reactive mind left, like a golem. And that phrase that they use to describe that mental state is known as the new man. The new man, made in the image and likeness of someone else. So that's what they think of these people. They think that they're doing something that is, this needs to be done, or, this is something that I take honor and pride in. You're looked at as less than a piece of dog crap that someone just stepped on and has stuck in the treads of their shoes by your owners. And apparently that's the amount of self-respect these people have. And I'm not saying this to insult anyone. I'm telling you what other people think of these people who are in control of them, who are their puppet masters. And they don't even recognize this. They don't even understand this is going on. Their higher ups think of them as less than a piece of dog crap that they walked on and got stuck in the treads of their shoes. And yet they still give them all this respect and won't disobey them, because that's the kind of self-respect level they have. None. Anybody that would take that kind of treatment can't even like themselves, let alone love themselves. They got to hate themselves. They have to be in such self-hatred and self-loathing for some reason because of some trauma that they have undergone. That's what we're talking about here. People to be in a mind state where you're willing to shut down other people's rights, and in doing so, you're shutting your own rights down. You can't possibly care about yourself. Some trauma in their life or some feelings of unworthiness are what are the underlying psychological reasons that people fall into this mind state. And they can't seem to work themselves out of it because they have very little help and support, and people basically, I guess, at some point in these people's past gave up on them as people. And that's why they flocked into this cult. This is a cult, ladies and gentlemen. It is a cult. When a police state forms, what you are actually seeing form is a cult. They use all the same tactics that a cult uses to separate these people from the rest of society, train them, remake the personality, traumatize them even more than they probably already were traumatized by situations and circumstances in their lives. And then they get traumatized more in their training facilities and boot camps. And then they turn these attack dogs loose on the other members of society. So what happened was, after I calmly informed them that I know what my rights are, you can't tell me or even claim that my rights don't apply anymore. It doesn't make a difference what a federal regulation says. One, it's invalidated. It's invalidated by the Constitution, the Bill of Rights, and even regardless of whether you accept the Constitution or Bill of Rights as the law of this country, which I don't even look at that as something that's supreme, this flies in the face of common sense and natural law. Human rights.
Mark, when we come back, we got to take another quick break. And when we come back, we'll continue this story at the point in which they put you into custody.
The Bob Tuskin.
He added those of hundreds and thousands of others who stood in the way of the new order.
Right now isn't what we're building for.
Eight 800-313-9443 is the troll-free number to join us. 800-313-9443. I'll open up the phone lines in just a moment, but I want to allow for Mark to continue telling us what happened to him this past Saturday in the city of brotherly love. Mark, you confronted the guys in the costume. They didn't like that very much, and what happened from there?
So after I calmly informed them that I do not, as a human being, need to pay someone else permission to speak and to peacefully exchange information with other human beings, which is true regardless of what any other living being on this planet will say. That is true eternally. I said, secondly, I'm already finished doing what I was doing here today, and I'm walking away. And they told me and my wife, you are not free to go. You are not free to walk away from us. I mean, think about this. Because they didn't like that I had stood up for a natural right, they're telling me now, we're taking your freedom of movement away now. These goons, thugs, these criminals, because that is what they are, assaulted me and my wife, came up from behind us, put cuffs on us so tight that the blood flow to our hands was arrested. And our hands were immediately becoming red. Barb complained they loosened her cuffs. They refused to loosen my cuffs. And I have what seems to be minor nerve damage on my left hand. I cannot not feel, do not have full feelings on the knuckles and a portion of the back of my left hand. So I'm not okay. I was physically injured. Perhaps permanently, because with nerve damage you can never really tell if it's going to go back to normal or not. Sometimes when they apply cuffs, they're doing it deliberately as a form of torture, as a subtle form of torture. And they knew exactly what they were doing by the way they applied them. And I kept telling them, I'm actively being hurt. You are actively hurting me by the way you've put those cuffs on. And they said, shut up, they're on correctly. Forced us to the ground, physically forced us to the ground, and detained us for almost a half an hour. I told them I don't consent to any searches. They illegally, unlawfully went into my pockets, pulled my wallet out. I did have an ID in the wallet. They were doing whatever check that they're doing, I guess, verifying who you are and seeing if you have any warrants or anything. And held us there during this process for over 20 minutes, at which case then I was not calm and really raised my voice at an extreme level, calling everyone's attention to the incident. Other people showed up with cameras, and I had about 100 people, I would estimate, gathered around listening to me saying they had no right to do this. We have been assaulted. Your rights have been usurped here today in front of the Independence Hall and the Liberty Bell. And there was a woman there very synchronistically with her son, with her young son. I'll probably be posting the video in a day or two. She was one of the descendants of Robert Treat Paine. Robert Treat Paine is one of the representatives from Massachusetts who was one of the signers of the Declaration of Independence from Massachusetts. Robert Treat Paine. And this woman was his descendant, and she had her son there. They went to Independence Hall to learn about their ancestor. She took her son to Independence Hall to learn about their ancestor. She was touring Philadelphia. Saw this all happen, went up to the police, was saying, what kind of an example are you showing our children? That we're in the place where our founders signed the Declaration of Independence, the Constitution, and the Bill of Rights, and you are taking people's freedom of speech here. It's
they have an answer. They just ignore.
No, they're just. You could tell these people are totally shamed.
Drones.
Shamed. They know deep down that what they're doing is completely morally wrong. But not one of them has any balls. Not one of them has a drop of courage in their whole damn body. They're a little fearful boy who will not say no to their owners. No, I will not do this. Why? Because you're afraid. You're a little fearful little punk boy who wouldn't dare try to do that to anybody on the street, not in a uniform. Because you get slaughtered by anybody trying to do that to as a regular person. But because people believe you have some kind of magical right to do this because you're wearing a uniform, and you'll trump up charges if they touched you and stopped you from doing that, you'd say you're assaulting a federal officer. When what you're doing is criminal activity because you think you're allowed to do it because someone told you, this is your orders, go and do this. And you think that makes it true or right. And it does not. And it never could. And if they tried to do that with anybody else, it would be considered assault and battery, and let alone go to jail, they'd probably get their ass handed to them on a platter.
If not shot dead.
Right.
We haven't heard all the details from this case in Orlando just today, but they went to interrogate the FBI and state troopers from Massachusetts. They went to interrogate this gentleman who was supposedly friends with one of the patsies for the Boston bombing situation, and they shot the guy dead. We don't know the full story, but my guess is, if they had the guy in custody, how is it possible that he posed such a threat that they needed to shoot him dead? It makes no sense.
Because what we're dealing with is a mafia criminal syndicate.
That's the only answer.
That is not going to back down with words, ladies and gentlemen. You're not going to make Nazis, which is what these people are. Nazis were committed to follow their orders.
Just following orders.
The secret police of Stalin's Russia, of Soviet Russia, were just following orders.
Just following orders, yep.
All right? That's where we're at in America now. That's just and that's what they kept saying. We're just doing our job,
yes.
sir. No, you're not. You are a criminal who is violating someone else's natural rights as a human being.
That's their job, though. So in a sense, they are doing their job.
And because they're fearful little boys, you can't find another job because you don't have a mind. You don't have a brain. You think this is all I could ever do. All I could ever do is be a hired bully, a hired thug.
Well, and they get off on it.
And this is what I have to do for a paycheck.
They love the adrenaline. They like the power trip. And, there's so many other aspects to this.
What they need to do is look up world history and U.S. history and understand what has happened to every former police state, the thugs of that police state. What has happened to them? Just go look it up, and you think it's going to be any different in America. You think that you're going to get away with it unscathed in America. This isn't Germany 1938. This isn't Soviet Russia in the 1950s.
Right.
This is America in 2013, and you will meet resistance.
There's no doubt about it. The people of this great country are not going to stand for this. And let me just point out real quickly here, and I'm not an apologist for the police by any means, but I have had moments, Mark, where the contrary has happened to the violations that were put against you. And the police have, from my experience, stood up for my First Amendment rights and have honored that and stayed true to their oath to the Constitution, which should trump any of the other stuff. So I want to just point that out.
That can absolutely happen. And I would say almost invariably, those are local police acting in the capacity as a peace officer.
Right.
These were federal police.
Interesting, yeah.
Okay? They're not hiring people in the federal capacity to act as a peace officer. They are only hiring trained criminal goons. That's what's going on at the federal level.
Well, from what I understand, even on a local level, they test these individuals to have low IQs,
right?
And they seek those people out because they're easily controlled. They take orders well, and they don't think for themselves. That's the whole.
The ostensible reason that they claim to the public is if someone is too truly intelligent, they would get bored with police work too quickly.
Right. Well, it's the same sort of conditioning that our education system has created. Just making people good repeaters, and that's it. Hey, Mark, our phone lines are loading up here, and I promised I'd take some calls.
I absolutely want to take some calls. Real quick, let me just point out one other thing that happened. After we were released from detainment, I refused to take a citation from them. They asked me if I understood why I was receiving a citation, and I said, no, I do not. And I am not taking that from you. And they said, well, a warrant could be issued for your arrest if you don't take it.
Have you looked into that?
Oh, I don't care what anybody says that they want to do. Okay? I said, I do not understand.
Yeah.
I am not going to go into some court to defend myself for something I did not harm another living being, and nor did my wife.
Is there a warrant, do you know?
I don't know. And quite honestly, they could do whatever they want to try to do to escalate this. It'll only make this incident reach far more people, as if it's not reaching thousands of people right now.
As we speak.
And ladies and gentlemen, the last thing to add insult to injury. After being released, I discovered that a $20 bill was missing from my wallet.
How petty. $20. And of course, money is...
I mean, can you even believe this? Can you believe...
$20. It's not like they took a substantial amount of money. $20.
Just to throw it in someone's face to say, I can get away with
I can get away. Yep, that's exactly what it is.
They think, folks. They think you're going to let them eternally get away with that kind of behavior.
Yeah. Yeah, that's exactly what that was about. All right, let's talk with Muhammad. Muhammad, hello.
Hello?
Yes, thank you for waiting patiently.
Hi. That your guest is very passionate, and feel sorry for him and what has happened to him. And it's true. The U.S. is the world's #1 police state, and the UK, I think, is also a police state. And I always talk about the fact that, do you know 2 years ago about the riots that occurred in the UK, Britain?
Yes.
They use shotgun tasers. Do you know what they are? Shotgun tasers.
Yeah, shotgun taser.
Yeah, it's like a shotgun, but it fires a taser. Have you heard of that?
I have.
It's literally like a normal shotgun, but it fires a taser. And I remember they killed a man, a very big kind of bodybuilder man, around about that time of the riots 2 years ago, in, I think it's Bolton, England. And yeah, it's they do all sorts of things here. They do kettling, they do, you know what the technique of kettling is?
I do.
Kettling. Yeah,
they surround everybody, push them into a confined area where it's very difficult to get out of, and then start doing violence to them.
Yeah, and that's essentially what they did at this rally, right?
These are violent criminals. I mean, that's what people have to understand. There's no legitimacy to what they are doing. They are the initiators of violence. No one can tell me that I did any violence. As a matter of fact, I looked at all of them before when they were telling me I wasn't free to go, and I was saying, on what grounds? Who have I harmed? Whose rights have I violated? Whose property have I harmed? Or who have I defrauded from property? And they said, none. No one. And you're still not free to walk away from me.
Wow.
Because they simply did not like what I had to say to them. They didn't like hearing
How dare you, Mark?
They were wrong about something.
Who are you? They're the ones in the costumes. Muhammad,
For me to tell someone else you are incorrect about what you think, your federal regulation that you are told to enforce cannot trump a natural right. And you have no right to try to do that to another person. You're in the wrong. They were so maddened by the fact that someone called them on their bullshit and told them that they were wrong that they immediately resorted to violence. And that's what I stand against. I stand against violence. I stand against all forms of violence. but I do not stand against the use of defensive force. And the people of America need to get their head out of their ass and understand the difference between those two terms. Because they are polar opposites of each other. Violence and force should never be used interchangeably. They are not the same thing at all. They are diametrically opposed. They are antitheses, polar opposites. Violence is the initiation of force you had no right to initiate against another person, to compel them against their will, to constrain their free will, or to do some form of harm to them because you want to coerce their free will, to coerce them. And you never, ever, ever have a right to do violence to another living being. However, if violence is being done to you, the right to use defensive force is an inherent right, and it exists for all people when violence is being done unto them. And we have a right to exercise that right when violence is being conducted. And I ask people, is violence already being conducted against the American people?
Hell yes, it is. Mark, we'll take our final break and we'll come back with some phone calls on the other side. Stand by.
The Bob Tuskin Show.
Morning, I'm gonna chase you out of earth. I'm gonna put on an iron shirt and chase Satan out of earth. I'm gonna put on an iron shirt and chase the devil.
I want to thank Mark Passio for coming on and sharing his first-hand experience with us today. This was all in front of Independence Hall and Liberty and the Liberty Bell, ironically. And we are ringing the bell here tonight, trying to...
in front of a statue of Thomas Jefferson.
Wow. Let's blast through some final phone calls here. Jerry, you've been waiting patiently. Go ahead, Jerry, real quick.
Yeah, I am sympathetic to Mark's situation, what occurred to him. I would hope that he would look up the term natural law because he's claiming natural rights. Natural law is the social contract. That is the...
No, sir, that's not what I'm referring to as natural law. I'm talking about the universal laws which govern the consequences of behavior. I'm not talking about John Locke's natural law, which you're referring to. That is not the capacity I'm using the term. So you should go and listen to the podcast that I've done on the topic and understand what I mean by the term natural law, not what you are erroneously referring to, what you think I mean by it.
Well, I'm referring to what this country and its courts call.
And I'm telling you that's not what I mean when I say the term natural law. So you're using a different definition.
You've made up a new term, a new definition for natural law?
I'm using the word natural in the capacity of inherent, not made by humankind. And law, a condition that is binding and immutable, meaning that it has an effect and it cannot be changed by man.
Well, I'm referring to what they do in the courtrooms and what the police do.
And I'm telling you that's not what I'm talking about. So it's neither here nor there. Go and listen to my podcast and you'll understand what I mean by natural law.
Mark's done a lot of work on natural law.
WhatOnEarthIsHappening.com. Go to the podcast page and start listening.
Jerry, thanks so much for calling. I'd like to hear more about your take on future shows to come. Matt in Missouri, you're on the air.
Yeah, Mark, I tell you what, that's just one of the signs of the times, man. I think you hit the nail right on the head when you called it a cult. We're looking at Mystery Babylon. That's what we're dealing with. It's a cultic movement. It's Satan's system and its works. But keep this in mind. I just want to say one thing to kind of lift you up. Over 20 million guns sold in the last 6 months.
That's right.
Just remember, 50% of the population didn't turn out to vote on the last national election because they're tired of the crap. People know on an instinctive level what's coming. And for the last 20 years, I've talked to people that say, yep, well, you know it's coming. We're getting ready. So,
let me tell you something. I've been to many, many gun shows in the last few months. And that is the exact sentiment that is prevalent. They say, we may not know as much as you. When I engage people in conversations and they understand how much I've researched, they say, sir, I may not know as much as you do, and I'll admit that, but I know enough to get ready.
Thank you, Matt, for the call. I appreciate it. Mark, you have about 30 seconds here. Final word.
I just want to say what they've done to a large portion of humanity is actually neuter our ability to get angry for the right reasons. They've taken this natural part of us and diminished it to a point where we won't even get angry, and that's why this police state has been allowed to encroach silently and come upon us. But it's here now. Ladies and gentlemen, the first thing you have to do is get angry and get informed and start doing something about it.
Bottom line. Mark, thanks so much, brother. What on earth is happening? Love you guys. We'll be back tomorrow night with more of the Bob Tuskin Show.
Chase those crazy ballers out of our town.
This has been another edition of the Bob Tuskin Show. Activism in action. Now go plant some seeds.
Now